the third-class passengers have to go through a health check where they're checking for lice for them, whereas the first-class passengers don't. We see how tiny the rooms are in steerage, whereas like Rose and Cal's staterooms are enormous. It's just huge, huge class differences.
This is post-production Emily. I'm here with a little mea culpa. Throughout the episode you're about to listen to, I keep saying the Titanic sank in 1915. It sank in 1912. For some reason, I got my dates mixed up. I think because it sank on April 15th, I got it stuck in my head that it was 1915. Please excuse the error. Other than that, I think you're in for a great episode.
Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. So come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit.
I'm Emily Guy Birkin, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit, because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? On today's episode, I'll be sharing my deep thoughts about the 1997 blockbuster film, Titanic, with my sister, Tracie Guy Decker, and with you. Let's dive in. Literally. So Tracie, I know you haven't seen this film, but you can't have missed it in the zeitgeist. Tell me what you know about it.
Yeah, I don't need to see it. That's why I never have.
It's also a million years long. Like a million. Like I started watching it 3 months ago. I'm still not done watching it.
Right. Right. So what I know about this film, James Cameron, it was like very important to him that this be sort of historically accurate. So he studied all of like the photographs. And even I went to this museum exhibit that I think was at National Geographic like 7 or 8 years ago that like had like some of the science of the like finding the wreck and like what they found at the bottom of the sea, and plus the movie, plus like the recreations of some of the stuff that had been on the ship. So I know that there was a lot of like attention to historical accuracy for this film. I know about Rose and Jack, and they like connected across a class divide, and she was like engaged or something to some blowhard, and he was an artist and like below her station class-wise, and at some point she says, draw me like one of your French girls. And after they're all in the water, like she's on a door floating, and he's like somehow like holding on to the door and like sacrifices himself to let go. And I know there's a huge debate in the culture as to whether or not there was in fact room on the door for Jack. And yeah, I guess that's it. That's what I know. That's what I know. So why are we talking about this historically accurate, very, very long movie from the late 90s that everyone in the world has seen besides me?
So this movie came out, we recently talked about another blockbuster from 97 that you didn't see.
In my defense, 1997, I was in England for half the year as like my senior semester abroad. And then I was graduating from college. So like seeing movies was not exactly my like top. But anyway, carry on.
And that's actually, that is, I bring that up because you were not in a point in your life where getting to the movie theater was a priority. So that's why I bring that up. Whereas I was in the midst of my, like, movies were my thing. I went to them weekly. And sometimes I'd see more than one movie a week. That was what I did in high school. So this was one actually, when it came out, I remember saying, like, I'm not sure I want to see that. It looks really depressing.
Yeah. I mean, you already know what happens, right?
I know how it ends. But, you know, everyone went to see it. I heard that it was an amazing spectacle just for the costumes. Like the costuming I wanted to see. Say what you will about James Cameron. He does spectacle right. I mean, he did an amazing job with this movie. Like,
the man commits to a bit.
He really does.
Like, he doesn't do it half-assed.
He puts his whole ass out there.
Oh my God, I just broke my sister. She's muted, so you can't hear her. Oh man. So now the reason I've been thinking about it is because I was on social media, I think Threads, it's been a few weeks ago, where someone was saying, like, you know, there are films that people look at as trans allegories, like The Little Mermaid, and there are a couple others, and there's a recent one that I wasn't familiar with. But what are some films that people are unfamiliar, like that you wouldn't think of as trans allegories? And I had read this theory years ago. As someone who likes to cite my sources, I'm sad that I don't remember where I saw this. But I had read this theory years ago that Jack is a trans man, and that explains a bunch of different things about the story. The specific thing that, because as a 18-year-old watching this, the Jack and Rose have sex in a car in steerage, and you don't see anything, but the windows are fogged up in the backseat of the car, and then someone's hand is like on the window and like leaves a smear. And the placement of the hand and the way that they are positioned feels weird for traditional heterosexual PIV sex. So I had always been like, as an 18-year-old, been like, exactly what are they doing in there? And so that was one of the reasons given for like an explanation of Jack being a trans man. And then there were several others. And I latched onto that theory. I thought that was really cool. And that also helped because Jack is kind of a manic pixie dream boy for Rose. Like, he is perfect in every way. And it explains things in a way that makes the romance feel better for me. So I mentioned that on Threads. I had a conversation with the person on Threads and who was like, wow, that is fascinating. That is really interesting. And that got me thinking about this movie again and wanting to rewatch it with that in mind, because I hadn't rewatched it when I'd read that theory. So that's why I'm talking about it today. And then rewatching it was really interesting because it's been at least 20 years since the last time I saw it. Kind of just where I am right now, why we're rewatching it. But there's a lot going on that I want to talk about. I mean, I really want to spend some time on that theory, but I want to talk about some of the weirdness about this movie in that, like, when I watched it, even as an 18-year-old, I remember leaving the theater going like, what's the point of this story? Why did I watch this story? It's not even like, because it is a disaster movie, like what we talked about with Independence Day, but it doesn't even give like the kind of comfort of a disaster movie, because it's not exactly the same kind of thing, because we know who's at fault in this disaster movie. We know exactly who's at fault. And we see like who's noble and who is cowardly and whose hubris has been brought to bear. And like, it's moving. There are times when I, even last night, was brought to tears. But at the end of it, it just seems like, and then that happened. And I remember feeling that way in the theater at age 18. And with the supposed character arc of Rose, if Jack is a cisgender man, I don't really understand other than the spectacle of seeing this. And I'm not saying that we don't need that, because it is important to have this historical understanding of this enormous tragedy. But why? We're not really humanizing this tragedy exactly the way that James Cameron, Like, I think, wants to.
Moral of the story sort of a thing?
Yeah, there's not really any there.
Like, there's no thesis to underline?
Yeah. It doesn't feel like there is. So there's that to it. There's also the fact that at the time, there was a lot of talk about how Kate Winslet was so chunky to be the lead.
Yeah, I remember that at the time.
Yeah.
She's not a big woman.
Yeah, I know. When I was watching, there was kind of the background information trivia, and they were talking about the dress she was wearing was a size 4, and they intentionally had the coat she was wearing was a size 8, so that it looked bigger on her, so she'd look more vulnerable. And I'm like, yeah, size 4, so big.
Size 4.
I know.
Ugh.
Part of the reason why it felt like there's no point is like there's this kind of discussion, there's this kind of like class distinctions where they show it over and over again, where there are these class distinctions and how Rose is in this gilded cage because she is
in the first class, and she's being forced into this marriage that she doesn't want, to the point where she's suicidal. And she does not have the kind of freedoms and vivacity that the women in the third class clearly have. And the third class passengers are treated like animals and treated like crap. But again, there's not really any point to it. It's just pointed out in the same way that there's this kind of like underlying feminist message that's just kind of like, and so that's a thing. All of those, I think, are just, it's very interesting, that I think is worth looking at. And then I have an opinion about the Jack and Rose in the door.
Excellent.
So, and I'd like to get to that too.
Excellent. Well, before we get there, can you give me a little more meat to, not all 5 million hours, but what? So, basically my understanding of the plot is boat, people, iceberg, disaster. That's the plot that I've got. So fill me in a little bit more.
When I was in college, I had a friend who summarized the film as something about a diamond, pretty lady gets naked, camera angle sucks, iceberg, ship sinks. That's about it.
All right, then.
It's a 3+ hour movie. There is a frame story where Bill Paxton, it doesn't matter what his name is a modern day, as in 1997, explorer, underwater archaeologist who is excavating the Titanic, specifically looking for a jewel that no one knows about. He only knows about it because of insurance records, called the Heart of the Ocean, that had belonged to Louis XIV, I think, had been purchased by a man named Cal Hockley, and had been asked, the insurance had paid out for it after the sinking of the Titanic. He finds in a stateroom a safe. They bring it up, they open it, assuming that the jewel will be in there, and it's worth millions of dollars. They do not find the jewel, but they do find a portfolio of drawings, including a drawing of a nude woman wearing the jewel, which is put on the news, and an extremely old woman sees it on the news, and she and her granddaughter contact Bill Paxton saying, "That is me in that picture." And she comes to the ship where Paxton and his crew are based and tells the story of how she came to be in that picture. So
that's Rose.
That is Rose.
Okay.
So now Paxton's crew doesn't believe that is Rose, because Rose DeWitt Bukater, who had been a passenger on the ship, was not listed as among the passengers who got off, among the survivors. This woman arrived in New York, Rose Dawson, and there's a record of her, Rose Dawson, who married someone else and had this career. She was an actress. And so because she was an actress, and although she's the right age, she's nearly 101, they're worried that she's faking. This is where I think James Cameron did a very intelligent thing in order to kind of give the audience an expectation of what will happen. The crew has a simulation of what happened the night of April 14th to the 15th, 1912, of when the ship hit the iceberg, and shows a kind of a recreation of how the ship sank. And they do it in a very insensitive way to someone who'd survived it. They do that to Rose, who I'm this is an extremely old woman who, this is the most traumatic event of her life. What the hell is wrong with you? But okay. She then begins telling her story, and the majority of the film is Rose as Kate Winslet. She tells the story, they called it the Ship of Dreams, but for me, and she says it was a slave ship, because she was being forced to marry Cal Hockley, played by Billy Zane, who even then, so Billy Zane is so my type. I don't know if he was wearing eyeliner, but he looked like he was. And he has the dark hair and and he's a horrible, abusive, controlling asshole. And I was just if you just stopped talking and didn't move, I would just like to look at you. But anyway, he's clearly got all kinds of money. And we see them board. We then also see Jack Dawson, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his friend Fabrizio playing poker, and they win tickets onto the Titanic from the people they're playing poker with 5 minutes before the ship leaves, and they just manage to get on before the ship leaves. We end up seeing, like, and again, I think Cameron did a really intelligent thing in how he handled this. Now, this cross-class love story allowed him to do what he wanted, which was show off the ship. So we see Jack and Fabrizio get on. We see that the third-class passengers have to go through a health check where they're checking for lice for them, whereas the first-class passengers don't. We see how tiny the rooms are in steerage, whereas like Rose and Cal's staterooms are enormous. It's just huge, huge class differences. We see that the first-class passengers are bringing dogs on board, and they are bringing them down to third-class decks to have them shit on the third-class decks. So Jack sees Rose at one point, and like it's, love at first sight. Like he sees her and is like, can't keep his eyes off of her. We also see that he draws. We also see Rose and Cal at dinner, and he is already like ordering dinner for her, speaking over her. She lights a cigarette, and her mother says to her, "Now, Rose, I don't like that." And Cal takes a cigarette out of her mouth and says, "She knows," and stubs it out. And the unsinkable Molly Brown is there and says, after he orders the dinner for her, she says, "You going to chew it for her too, Cal?" And so we get a little bit of the 90s feisty because she's at the same table with Mr. Andrews, who built the ship, and Mr. Ismay, who was the idea man behind it. So Mr. Andrews like designed it and built it, and Mr. Ismay was the one who I wanted it to be big because of safety, and I called it Titanic. And so we get some like 90s feminism, like, so have you heard what Mr. Freud has to say about men's obsession with size?
Does Molly Brown say that?
No, Rose says that. Molly Brown laughs.
Oh, good. Cool.
And Mr. Ismay says, "Who is this Freud? Is he a passenger?" He has no idea.
Oh, so he's an idiot too.
Yeah. Well, and it's also
an ignoramus anyway.
Yeah. So the next night, and we hear older Rose's voiceover saying, like, I saw my life ahead of me, and it was nothing. Like, I would go where I was told. I was going to be parties and cotillions, and I would disappear. And so we see her like running across the ship, running to the back of the ship, where she gets over the railing, and Jack is on the deck and sees her, and then goes to talk to her, saying, "You're not really going to do it," and like basically talks her down. But as she's trying to get back over the railing again, and he says to her, like, "If you jump, I jump. I'm invested now." And he takes off his shoes and his coat, and she's like, "That's ridiculous. You can't do that." And he's just like, "Well, I'm not the ridiculous one. You're the one who's threatening to jump. This is just, I have to do this." And he tells her, like, he grew up in Wisconsin. When he went ice fishing, he fell in the lake, and it's so cold, it's like 1,000 knives in your body, and basically talks her down. But as she's climbing back over the railing, she slips and he grabs her, but she screams. And so people come running, and he gets her back over again. But the assumption, because it's this upper class woman and this third class steerage man, they are planning to arrest him. Rose lies and says, "I slipped it was an accident. I slipped. I was looking over to look at the propellers, and Jack rescued me." And so she manipulates Cal into inviting Jack to dinner the next night. And Cal's valet, Lovejoy, is the only one who notices that Jack's jacket and shoes were undone. So this was a lie. But Rose doesn't want anyone to know that she was suicidal. So the next 2 days, we see Rose and Jack talking to each other more. So Rose sees Jack's art. We have already established that she has an eye for art. She's collected some Picasso and Monet and other artwork. and she recognizes Jack's talent. Jack asks if she loves Cal, and she refuses to answer. They have a conversation about like how his parents have passed away. He is kind of rootless, but goes all over the world, and that she should learn to do things like a man, like spit like a man and ride a horse like a man, not side saddle, things like that. And they could go to some place together and ride the roller coaster until they both puke. They run into Molly Brown, who asks Jack, "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" And he says, "Not really, no." And she's like, "What are you going to wear to dinner?" And he's like, "This." And she's like, "No." So she gives him her son's tuxedo so that he can show up for dinner appropriately dressed. And although he does okay, Rose's mother continues to put him down, asks like, "How are the rooms in third class?" And he says, "Oh, they're great, hardly any rats," and makes people laugh. And she's like, "Well, do you really want to live this rootless lifestyle?" Like he has any other choice because he has no money. And he says, "Well, 2 days ago I was sleeping under a bridge, and here I am drinking champagne with all of you fine people. I love this. Make every moment count." He takes Rose to a party in the third class steerage. They dance. Cal finds out because Lovejoy has followed them, and he yells at her, slaps her, and tells her that, she will not act like this, that she is his wife in deed, if not in legality, meaning that they've slept together already, and that she can never see him again. So she's taking a tour of the ship with Mr. Andrews, who's the one who built the boat, and she remarks on the fact that there are enough lifeboats for all the passengers. She did the math in her head. Mr. Andrews says, "Yes, there's enough room for all the lifeboats, but I was told that it made the deck cluttered. But don't worry, I made you an unsinkable ship." Jack is able to speak to Rose, saying like, "Look, I won't bother you again. I'm worried about you. You're in a trap. They've got you trapped. Like, you need to get out of this. We have learned that from Rose's mother that they are penniless. Rose's father died, leaving them indebted, and the only thing they have is their name. And so this marriage must happen, or else they lose all of their money. And her mother cannot imagine living without the luxury that they're used to." And Rose says, "No, I have to keep doing what I've been expected to do." Later on, she comes back, she finds Jack again, says, "I've changed my mind." And so they have an adventure all over the ship. So you get to see everything, like the engine room with these giant pistons and all of that. She takes him back to her room. She puts on the diamond necklace and poses naked and says, "Draw me like one of your French girls." They run away into steerage and have sex in the car, and they are on deck when the ship runs into the iceberg. She had left a note for Cal saying, like, with the image of her and the diamond in the safe, saying, "Now you can keep both of us in your safe," meaning the diamond and the picture of her. When they hit the iceberg, she's like, "This is bad. We need to go tell Mother and Cal." And so she goes back, and that's when Lovejoy puts the diamond in Jack's pocket. They use that to arrest him. So over the next several hours, the ship goes through the process of sinking, and we see a number of like disaster movie cliches. And while Jack is handcuffed in a room in third class, at first, so Rose gets to one of the lifeboats with her mother and Molly Brown. Her mother is saying, "I do hope they won't let any third class passengers on the lifeboat." And Rose says to her, "Shut
That's
up."
yucky.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
her
good.
mother's awful. Yeah. She says, "Shut up. People will die. You heard what Mr. Andrews said on the tour. There's only enough for half the people on this boat. People will die." She turns around and she says, "Goodbye, Mother," and turns around and leaves. And Cal says, "Where are you going? Are you going to be his whore? Or that gutter rat's whore?" And she says, "I'd rather be his whore than your wife." So
Jesus.
yeah. So she finds Mr. Andrews and says, where would they take someone they've arrested? And he's like, "You have to get off of here, get off of this boat, get off this ship." And she says, I'm going to find him whether I have your help or not. It will take longer without your help. And so he tells her where to find him. She has to find stakes. She has to find an axe to break his handcuffs. There are several back and forth with Cal. Cal tries to buy his way onto a boat because it's only women and children. We see Mr. Ismay because Cal has lost track of Rose again. And then Lovejoy has found her with Jack. And so Mr. Ismay takes Cal's spot on the boat that he bought and see the judgment, because it's Mr. Ismay's fault ultimately that all of this is happening. We see the musicians playing on the deck. We see a mother putting her kids to bed in third class, telling them a story, and a husband and wife holding each other on a bed as the water comes up. And Jack and Rose are being chased by Cal. Rose ends up getting on a boat. Cal and Jack both encourage her to get on the boat, and they lie to her saying Jack will get on a boat with Cal. Halfway down, because they have to pull it down on ropes. Halfway down, she jumps back onto the Titanic and says, I'm not leaving without you, Jack. You jump, I jump, from when they first met. And so there are no boats left, although Cal grabs a loose child and claims that's all she has in the world and is able to get on a boat, that lifeboat that way. So Jack and Rose end up on the stern of the boat, because that's the last part that goes into the water. And he helps her, he knows okay, it's going to try to suck us in when it goes down. Take a deep breath and then push up as soon as, and hold on to my hand. They do all that. Then they find the door. So she gets on the door. He tries to get on. My opinion on the door is it's not that it's not big enough for both. It's that it's not buoyant enough for both. Because when he tries to get on it, it almost turns over. There are a bunch of people, they're screaming, they're shouting, and there are all of these lifeboats. Molly Brown's lifeboat, she's saying come on, let's go back and help them. And they refuse. And the captain of that lifeboat, not captain, but the White Star Line employee says, we're not going back. They would swarm us. And if you don't keep your mouth shut, then there'll be one less person on this boat. So only one boat comes back to look for survivors. And Old Rose says there were 1,500 people who went into the water. Only one boat came back, and only 6 people, including myself, came out of the water. So Jack and Rose talk. She says she loves him. He says, don't say that. You're not saying goodbye. Promise me you'll hold on. Promise me you're going to live to be an old woman. You're going to die in a warm bed. You're going to do all the wonderful things we've talked about. And when the boat comes back, she sees it. She tries to wake Jack up, but he has died, and she manages to get the boat's attention. She gets into the boat. We later see another ship has come and rescued them. Cal comes looking for her on the third class deck where all the third class passengers were. She was hiding, and he did not see her. She saw him. She says that's the last time she saw Cal. At one point, he had put his coat around her, and that's where the Heart of the Sea diamond was in his coat. And he had forgotten when he put it around her. And she found it when she got onto land. So we see that. We never see anyone tell Bill Paxton that. So we're back in the modern times. We see Bill Paxton talking to Rose's granddaughter saying, I've been focused on this for 4 years, but I never really understood. I never really got it. And he has a cigar. I was saving this for when I found the Heart of the Sea, and then he throws it into the ocean. And it ends with Old Rose in her nightgown on this ship, barefoot, going to the end of this ship with the Heart of the Sea in her hands and throwing it out into the ocean. And then she goes back to her cabin where she's got all of her photographs of her life and sees that she flew a plane, she became a pilot, and riding a horse, not side saddle, leg on each side with a roller coaster in the background. And then she's dreaming of being on the Titanic again with Jack. And then that's the end of the film.
Why'd she throw the...
I know.
I mean, it could have been really helpful for her granddaughter and shit.
It could have been really helpful for Rose in 1915.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a rock. That other people value highly.
Oh,
Get that bread.
no.
Get the money, Rose.
She's kept it for 84 fucking years. Okay,
Get
so
that money, Rose.
okay,
I mean, she could have even like struck a deal with Bill Paxton, and he could have said that he like found it, and they could have like split the money. Sorry.
so like, okay,
What did you want to say about this movie?
so I'm not even sure. I think I know what James Cameron thinks he was doing with her throwing the Heart of the Sea in the ocean. I think.
And what's that? Because I don't think I get it.
I think she was letting go. I think.
Of what? Because didn't the Heart of the Sea represent Cal? Not Jack.
I don't know.
I mean, weird. Okay.
I told you like that as I was watching it last night, my feeling was like, what is the point of this movie? That's part of now, like I didn't have that exact response 30 years ago as a teenager watching this. But I did go like, what the fuck is that lady doing with the like, okay, why did you hold on to it for 84 years to throw it in the ocean now?
Only to throw it in the sea. Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
like,
if Rose had thrown it in the sea in 1915, I would have totally understood.
totally.
That
Yeah.
would have made perfect sense to me.
Because it represented like all of this terrible stuff. I mean, it wasn't the iceberg, but it certainly caused suffering for the man that she thought she loved.
Yeah. So, like, I totally would have understood that. But for her to hold on to it for 84 years.
Yeah, weird.
As a symbolic gesture, it means nothing. It does not mean anything. So that's what I mean. Like, and then the fact that Jack died also feels like, now that's a symbolic gesture that is actually not, it doesn't mean nothing in that if the ship hadn't sunk, like if the Titanic had, because she'd said, when we dock, like before they hit the iceberg, she said, when we dock, I want to go with you, Jack. That was never going to happen.
Yeah.
It was never going to happen because Cal was wealthy.
Would have pursued her.
And powerful.
Yeah.
And she could not have remade herself.
She couldn't have escaped.
She could not have escaped. And like the thing is, if Jack had survived, like if he could have gotten up on
the door.
If the door had been buoyant enough, because it was big enough, yes, but it wasn't buoyant enough.
Okay.
I don't know. Like this was a 3-day love affair.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they were compatible
Soulmates.
for,
Right.
Yeah. And like I don't know what they actually have in common with each other. You know, that
Right.
is not the making of lasting love, of a lifelong commitment to each other. That doesn't mean it's not real. That doesn't mean it's not like life-changing. That doesn't
Meaningful.
mean
Sure.
meaningful.
Sure.
But in the same way, like you and I have been on cruise ships and we've made friends there and never seen them again.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That also is kind of like part of why I feel like what's the point of this is like circumstances changed Rose. She didn't change.
Interesting.
And she even says, Jack saved me in every way a person can save another person. And that feels kind of gross. When I do feel like James Cameron was trying to be feminist, ?
Right.
There's this one scene where Rose is dressing for dinner and her maid, Trudy, who's very kind to her, is lacing her corset. And you can see Rose like flinching. Rose's mother comes in and says, Trudy, get some tea. And Rose's mother takes over with the corset and is like pulling even harder. And so it's just like not subtle. Rose's mother is saying like, you have to behave yourself. Cal is our last chance. We have no money. And Rose says, you remind me of that daily. And you care more about the money than you do about me. And Rose's mother says like the one thing that makes her in any way sympathetic, which is we're women, our choices are never easy. And So, like, you do get this sense that Cameron was trying, but all of this just happens to Rose. Now, like, you get the 90s feisty, not like other girls. Like, she gives Lovejoy the finger at one point, which I cannot imagine in 1915.
In 1915? Yeah.
Yeah, well-bred young woman.
Mm-mm.
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 Not that I like the term well-bred, but you know what I mean.
Even the fact that she contemplated suicide rather than, go through with the marriage, I think kind of gives you that sort of feistiness. It is part of Cameron, I think, trying to sort of show us how horrible it was for her, how trapped she was in this gilded cage. Can we pivot to the Jack as a trans man idea? Because I feel like that changes that immensely. Like, even sort of the ways in which you described him saying, like, you need to learn how to act like a man, spit like a man and ride astride instead of side saddle. Like, if Jack is a trans man, then he's speaking from experience of having learned to do those things, right?
Yeah.
And there's there's a level of like almost mentorship from someone who's been through it that a cis man saying those things does not convey. Like, a cis man doing it, it feels like saviorism. A trans man doing it feels like solidarity.
Yeah. It feels a lot better. Now, part of where this comes from is the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio in 1997 was
so pretty.
So pretty, yeah.
So pretty.
I mean, he was, and like, completely clean-shaven, like, whereas Billy Zane, like, had a 5 o'clock shadow right after he shaved. So, like, the comparison, even though Billy Zane is very, very pretty, like, those eyes.
Yeah.
But there's a kind of boyishness, and they keep calling him a boy, even though DiCaprio, I think, was 24 or 25. So, I mean, he was a grown man at the time, fully adult man, but he was very, very pretty, very slight. And so, like, had they cast a different actor, this would not have been, this theory wouldn't
fly so well, or at least not as convincingly, like,
not as neatly. Yeah. And then it also kind of fits with some of the backstory that he gives. He has been on his own since he was 15, and it kind of, we don't get any backstory other than the fact that he was born in Wisconsin. There's like some not shitty, it's fine. There's some fan theories that he's a time traveler because he mentions a lake in Wisconsin that didn't exist in 1915, saying he grew up on that lake. And so people are like, oh, he's a time traveler.
That's just bad.
It's just
fact-checking on Cameron's part, right?
Yeah, it's just bad fact-checking. When she is looking at his sketches, there's one woman that he has sketched multiple times. He's like, she says, I think you had a love affair with her. And he says, no, just with her hands. She was a one-legged prostitute. And so he has been hanging out with people who are on the margins of society. So it would make sense that a 15-year-old, first of all, like, thinking if an orphaned 15-year-old girl began dressing in male clothing to get by and then fully transitioned.
To get by and to avoid being sexually harassed or trafficked, if she could pass.
Yeah. And then fully embracing it. And then that also, there are some things, like, there's a point where when he is dressed up in the tuxedo and he sees Rose, he kisses her hand and he says, I saw that on Nickelodeon once and I've always wanted to do it. And there's this sense of, like, that is a gender affirming behavior. And a lot of the kind of survival things that he does, where the Manic Pixie Dream Boy stuff, where it's like, make every moment count, fits with the idea of be who you are.
Well, and also it fits with someone who's lived with the constant threat of danger, which a trans man in the early 20th century would have.
And it fits with him recognizing how trapped Rose is. Because one of the things she says when she talks to him the day after her suicide attempt, she says, "I know what you're thinking, poor little rich girl." Like, and he says, "I'm not thinking that at all. I think you are really unhappy." And it's because he recognizes you feel trapped. And that kind of insight without resentment would make sense for someone who has lived it, even though she has the trappings of privilege.
Right.
So I find that a much easier and better interpretation of this film than looking at it just, forgive the pun, straight. Because otherwise, like, Jack just is too good to be true. Like, why is he so devoted to Rose? And why is he so unbothered by the fact that her life in so many ways has been so much easier than his? And why is he so willing, like, just because, you know, she's this ethereal beauty, to do all of these things to try to save her when he's known her for a few days?
Yeah.
Whereas if he recognizes a kindred spirit, because he too felt trapped.
I do think that Cameron, even if we read it as Leo is playing a cisgender man, the fact that we have such a strong contrast between Cal, who exploits a child in order to get on a lifeboat, versus Jack, who sacrifices himself effectively for Rose. Like, I think Cameron is trying to show us the nobility in even the sort of face value read of Jack, which speaks to potentially like what maybe he thought he was doing with the class stuff, right? There's like a heart of nobility and goodness and moral virtue among this literally shat upon people on the third, you know, in the steerage, that is completely missing from those in the first class.
Many
like
of those.
Well, sure, but like the specific instances that you told me in your, you know, in the synopsis that you gave me, like there was multiple examples from Ismay to Rose's mom to Cal of people who like were just absolute cowards and hiding behind their money and privilege versus Jack.
Yeah,
that feels like a heavy-handed kind of a message around. And that's money and class.
That's kind of what I mean, like, when I say what's the point, because, like, it's heavy-handed. And then she throws the diamond in the water for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, just because we're in late-stage capitalism doesn't mean we don't play by the rules while we're advocating to change them, you know?
Well,
like,
and if she'd done it...
millions of dollars in your hands, like...
If she'd done it when she was, you know...
If she'd done it in 1915, that would have been different.
In 1915. Like, and that would have been meaningful.
Yeah, because she was throwing away the trappings of the old life that trapped her. The trappings that trapped her. Yeah. Was there no one? Couldn't Catherine Bigelow? Like, weren't they still married then? That's Cameron's wife, or ex-wife now, also a director, and she won an Academy Award. Was the first woman to win an Academy Award for Hurt Locker. Like, couldn't she have been like, James? No, no. I mean, I'm sure that there was some sort of like romanticism of having the old lady do it.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
I know. Seeing the images of all the things she's done in her life, that she has been, like, Jack has had an effect on her life, and that is lovely. There's something very, very lovely about that. But why did she throw the diamond in the water 84 years later?
Yeah. So we're running short on time. I just want to name, like, I'm looking at what we talked about in advance, and like the one thing that I just want to come back to briefly, and then anything that we missed, is like the In the Frame story. One of the things that is sort of interesting is that, like, Paxton's like, I've been chasing this thing for 4 years and I didn't really understand it, and like it was a tragedy. And before we hit record, you were like, duh. I do think there's something to this, because I think, again, like, part of the point was like, these were real people who really died, and it was a real tragedy, which like, we didn't need to sit through a 5-hour, you know,
it's a 3-hour movie,
whatever, a 5 million year movie in order to like be reminded that it was a real tragedy where real people died and like real lives were ruined. But maybe we did. Maybe Cameron needed that. I don't like that little piece of tension of your duh is what I wanted to maybe unpack a little bit before we run out of time.
I think that's related to my dissatisfaction with the old lady throwing the diamond, because Bill Paxton's character is looking for the diamond, and they actually even have, like, when he's on the news with the image, like the drawing of Rose, like they're asking him, like, don't people think that it's like unreasonable of you to be looking for treasure when, you know, this is like museum,
a watery
blah, blah,
grave
blah.
for
watery grave
people or whatever.
And he says, like, well, we have people who are doing this, this, and this. And there is this sense, like, even as he's looking for, like, the first scene is him, like, narrating something. And one of his crew is just like, oh, you're so full of shit. And then, like, it's clear he's focused on finding the jewel. And so it's this, like, it's the Indiana Jones, like, oh, I'm finding the gold. That belongs in a museum. And, like, not really taking in the scope of, like, what this really means.
Right.
And I think, like, I think that's worth saying. I think that's worth talking about. And I feel like Cameron was trying to say the heart of the ocean doesn't matter. And that's why she throws it in the water at the end. But none of that is how human beings operate. And that's why I'm so annoyed by it. Because, like, no one would hold on to that fucking thing for 84 years.
And then throw it away. Yeah. If you're going to hold on to it, you hold on to it.
Yeah. And pass
then
it
you
on. Or
and then your granddaughter gets money for it or whatever.
Yeah. Or you throw it away right away because you're so angry about what has just happened to you.
Yeah.
And so, like, I know that this was supposed to be like Bill Paxton understanding something. And, like, maybe Bill Paxton is a stand-in for James Cameron. Like, understanding something.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it doesn't fit the character. It doesn't fit human behavior. Yeah. And so, like, duh, this enormous human tragedy. And, like, good on James Cameron for making me cry. It was the violinist and the quartet. He said, it's been a privilege playing with you tonight, to the quartet. And I teared up because that is what it is to be human. To play while the Titanic sinks. And that is amazing. And I will be grateful forever to James Cameron for giving me that. But I feel like he got in his own way.
He got part of the way there. Yeah, he got part of the way there. And then
he got in his own way. He needed it to mean something to him.
And this is a matter of not killing your darlings. Because Rose throwing the heart of the sea into the ocean is a darling that he should have killed. Yeah.
Unless he had 17-year-old Rose do it.
Right. All right. Well, we are really running out of time. So let me see if I can reflect back to your thoughts on the Titanic. So I'll start with, yes, the door was big enough, but it wasn't buoyant enough. Okay?
Yes.
So this movie in some ways lacks a point. Because we don't have sort of the moral of the story. We don't have the bigger meaning. We don't have the ways in which, like, Rose's character changed, right? Like, her life was changed by the experience, but, like, there was no, like, growth that we're seeing. So that is, I don't know, problematic. This movie is frustrating, for the storytelling piece. This movie is much more satisfying if we imagine that the gorgeous, very pretty, very, like, boyish, I'm putting quotes around that, Leonardo DiCaprio playing Jack is in fact a trans man and not a cisgender man. And somehow that, like, really transforms the whole romance and makes it less about Jack being a savior and more about Jack being a mentor who has been through it before, right? So someone who says, hey, I've been where you are and here's how you can get through it. And then that romance sort of, it feels more co-equal to me in the way that you described it. The thing that I said earlier was that it was less about saviorism and more about solidarity. That is really a very interesting interpretation. And I think that also helps to underscore the feminism question mark that maybe Cameron was, like, trying for but didn't quite make. And we see that he was trying for it by really getting us as an audience to deeply sympathize and empathize with poor Rose, who is trapped in this life that is not just unsatisfying, but causing suffering and forcing her, like taking away her agency and taking away her choices over and over and over again. We have her being sort of feisty and telling the boat designer that he has a small penis and having Molly Brown laugh at that and having Molly Brown ask her fiance if he's going to chew for her too and that sort of thing. There's also this like, regarding that sort of feminist piece, or there was less like a call to action or even a judgment and more like a, here's the thing that happens. And there was a similar sort of, here's the thing that happens around class and classism in the boat, in the way that the story unfolds and what we get to see about it, that it wasn't even necessarily judgment. And then there is a judgment, but like, what do we do with it? Because we see, though there are some people who are moral human beings among the first class passengers,
Mr.
many
Andrews
of them
in particular, but yeah.
Many of them we see are just completely morally bankrupt, self-serving, and not afraid or embarrassed or ashamed to, like Rose's mother, to like commit other people to death because they're not of the same class. Cameron like showed us something and then didn't quite turn it all the way around. He also kind of got in his own way, where he was committed to this historic accuracy that was gorgeous and beautiful, made you cry with the musicians on the deck in this hopeless situation. But then also, like, he needed to throw the heart of the sea or whatever, the diamond, into the ocean. And so he had ancient Rose do it, even though it was completely out of character. It's completely out of sync with human behavior for someone who held on to this thing for over 80 years. And so we end up with this darling that maybe should have been killed somewhere in revisions, and leaves you saying, like, where were his editors? Where was his wife saying, don't do that? So what did I forget?
Just the spectacle of this film. Like, Cameron, he committed his whole ass.
Whole ass. He whole-assed it.
It's an amazing feat. Although it, oddly enough, like as high-tech as special effects are, it has aged. There are some things that, as we all do, I like it a lot better if I assume that Jack is a trans man.
Yeah, cool. Well, I still don't really want to watch it, but I'm really glad to know more about it. So thank you for this. Next week, I am going to bring you my deep thoughts about a very obscure movie that we loved as children called The Beastmaster.
That was the movie. That was why you wanted ferrets.
That is exactly why I wanted ferrets, was because of that movie. So I'm looking forward to rewatching it. I haven't seen it in probably 40 years. So next week, I will share my deep thoughts with you about it.
See you then.
This show is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. If you enjoy it even half as much as we do, please consider helping to keep us overthinking. You can support us at our Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. Or leave a positive review so others can find us. And of course, share the show with your people. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes.
Thank you to Resonate Recordings for editing today's episode.
Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?